A year ago, the introduction of the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship filled a much-needed void in the racing world. Across the globe, racetracks fell silent as the global pandemic shifted priorities for everyone. But for the SRO and those who devote their lives to racing, there would be no pause on high-level competition and entertainment. The world of esports, specifically in sim racing, allowed competition to continue with everyone at home. And while the light is at the end of the tunnel and racing is back, the SRO is still forging ahead, blending the line between real and virtual in Assetto Corsa Competizione. The end of the GT Rivals Championship last time around brought us to Kyalami Grand Prix Circuit, and this famous South African course is where it will start all over again for 2021. This is the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Kyalami, the first round this season. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Eric Brennan this afternoon. Eric, welcome. An exciting start to a season on a rainy day here in South Africa at Kyalami Circuit.
Thanks a lot, Kyle, and I got to admit that when I saw that this was the venue we were going to kick things off for, I was excited because when you think of diverse and true testing GT3 competition, Kyalami is one of the first tracks that comes to mind, and with the cast of characters and the field of talent, the level of depth that we see, and diversity in vehicle choice, I think we're in for one of the most exciting sprint races that we will see across the board in this season.
So excited to kick things off with the first round this season, and the entry list has a lot of familiar names, one of which is right near the top of the order. Brian Heitkotter in the number 5 Chris Forsberg Racing Nissan GTR Nismo GT3. He finished second here the last time the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship visited Kyalami Circuit, so he is probably the one that I've got my eye on here this afternoon. Cody Pride from PPR Esports at the top of the lineup there in the number 1 car in a Porsche 911 GT3R. Brennan Meyer, Brandon Chan. A couple drivers down the list that have joined us here before. Caleb Lavender running for his own private team at a BMW M6 GT3. He ran in the GT4 category in the championship last year, so he's no new driver to this championship. But there's more drivers that are here that are brand new. Emile Carpentier down in the number 11 car in an Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo, one of those GT3 cars that, again, is a very unique car given that it's mid-engine with the V10. And Eric, we talked briefly, you talked briefly about the different cars that we've got. We've got a whole bunch of different manufacturers from Porsche, Mercedes, Nissan, Acura, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, BMW, and more. Eric, really exciting entry list with all the cars we've got here.
When we looked at the entry list as we continue to comb through some of the drivers and teams that we're going to see in these races, I mean, 12 different manufacturers, 14 different types of cars, considering the fact that the Mercedes AMG, we have 2 GT3s in the field, 1 GT4, 1 GT5, according to the entry list that was handed to us. So that's 14 different types of vehicles that we will see on the racetrack of the 49 cars and names that make up this field. And what's interesting is, in a lot of my research and homework done for this event, it's hard to figure out what car may exactly work best here at Kyalami. Many would consider this to be a medium speed track, so with that in mind, some may pencil in the Aston Martins because of the way they can handle some of these medium speed corners that we're going to highlight here a little bit later on tonight. But there's a look at some of our drivers who are competing here. A lot of different options at their disposal for what you mentioned earlier, Kyle, as challenging track conditions, and we're not that far away from seeing who went the right way and who's got the talent to match what it's going to take to master this circuit for 60 minutes.
60-minute race coming up in just a few minutes. They've already qualified and set the grid, and we'll run that down for you in a few minutes. But first, we're going to talk about some of the great partners and people that make this all happen. Again, of course, Fanatec, with their exciting announcement this past year, working with the SRO globally to introduce esports to the team championship in the real SRO series across the world. What an exciting announcement to bring in esports and make it part of the real championship, really paving the way for what I think is the future of motorsport. So that's very, very exciting. Glad to have Fanatec with us. AWS, CrowdStrike, Pirelli, HPD, and of course we've got Kunos, AK Esports behind everything, and the Sim Grid with us here this season. So big thanks to all the partners and people that make this happen. And Eric, thanks for joining me here today. You mentioned the weather conditions. Have a look at the skies here at Kyalami. It is very dark, and the potential for rain always looming. And the wet racetrack we've seen in the past here in these GT World Challenge America Esports Championships. Think back to our 6 hours of Spa in 2020. Man, that was a tough race. And you mentioned the medium speed, yes, but some of those medium speed corners are very fast for anybody in a road car. So this is going to be a change in speed for those that are watching at home. These high downforce corners, especially through the high-paced S's, going to be a lot of fun to watch here today for 60 minutes. No compulsory pit stop, Eric, but that means that you can't just beat your stuff up. You got to conserve just a little bit to make sure that you make it to the end with the tires you've got.
especially with the weather conditions. I mean, that's the variable. We do our homework and kind of see what car may be best here, what driver may have a little bit of an advantage. But once you throw the wet weather in there, that kind of switches things up, as it does in any form of motorsports, especially with the GT3 action we're going to see here today. And you're right, that conservation of equipment, some may think that because of the fact that we got some wet weather, that's going to perhaps be a little bit lenient on tire degradation. Not so fast. As a matter of fact, I think it's a little bit more risky because of the fact that you need that little bit of tread to be able to be available to you to give you the best contact patch in some of these slick corners. And you're right, we use the term medium speed loosely. However, some of these corners do carry a lot of speed, and making sure that you have that car at the right pace while getting through some of these sectors of the racetrack is going to matter a lot, considering the fact that, weather was a bit of a factor there.
Well, we could show you the track map, or we could have Carl Whitmer from HPD Yas Racing take us through it. We're going to have Carl Whitmer walk you through a lap here at Kyalami Circuit.
Hey everyone, Carl Whitmer here, driver of the number 22 Acura NSX GT3 Evo, and here's a Honda Performance Development Lab at Kyalami in South Africa. Alright, crossing the start-finish line here at Kyalami, we're heading down to turn 1. It opens up quite a bit, so there's going to be big passing opportunities. You're keeping your eye on the 100-meter board. It's going to be hard on the brakes. You're looking to turn in early, late apex, hard on the throttle, use all the exit curb. You want to set up the car going through turn 3, 4, 5, brake straight. Turn in a little bit early. You want to float through this corner and not get over aggressive to unsettle the platform. As you head down to turn 6, called sunset. And the reason for that is as you exit, there's going to be a massive sun right in your face, and it's really hard to see. So you want to get through here quite fast. Avoid the bump on the exit. Clubhouse is turn 7, hard on the brakes. A couple lines here you can take, but you don't want to be over aggressive. Use all the traction control, use all the exit, heading to the S's. A little bit of a blind entrance, clip the inside curve. You want to be really precise, slight lift, full throttle, up on the exit, heading up to turn 10. You want to find a reference point. I find it in the trees. A couple different lines here again for different chassis, different setups. Turn in early, really hard on the throttle, use all the traction control, use all the exit, down mine shaft. This is quite steep of a downhill, so you want to be careful when you're drafting or passing. It's going to be a really hard brake zone down here at the bottom of the hill, and it veers off to the right constantly, so you want to be able to set up the car perfectly. If not, you'll get caught out on the outside. Hard on the throttle, use all the traction control again. Heading up to turn 15, one of the hardest corners. Do not want to hit that sausage curve on the inside, you'll be flying to the outside. So hard on the brakes to 50 sign, last corner. Get on the throttle as hard as you can, use all the traction control, and that's a lap at Kyalami in South Africa.
Carl Whitmer just took us through the Honda Performance lap around Kyalami Grand Prix circuit. And Eric, it is a very, very fast racetrack. And an interesting characteristic of this place is that the first corner is just that slight kink, that slight bend to the right. Turn 2 is that first sharp left-hander at the end of the long straightaway. Think back to last season and the conclusion of the GT Rivals Championship, Eric. We had 4 wide heading down into that first corner, the second corner, the left-hander down there. And it was a really exciting start to this race. So you got 60 minutes, Eric, but everyone knows that you can't win it in the first corner, and but you certainly could lose it, and we got to make sure that drivers are being cautious enough to make it out the other side.
Being that this is one of the few 60-minute sprint races on the calendar, we got some endurance races that'll be coming up a little bit later on in the season. And I would expect there to be a little bit of urgency to try to get going, especially if you didn't get a good lap laid down in qualifying. So I'm not ruling out the fact that we may have one of those crazy runs towards that second corner, because that is one of the best passing opportunities on the racetrack. There's a very sharp left-hander that kind of sweeps through and heads to turns 3 and 4 before they make their way down that second sector of the racetrack. But it's a long run up there, though. Past that start-finish line through that kink to turn 2, you can carry a lot of momentum and a lot of speed, and I think this first attack here, once we get this thing underway, is going to be pretty wild.
Absolutely. Let's have a look here at our starting lineup, the grid down there at the starting line, and we're going to have a look down the entire grid in just a little bit, and then we're going to get them rolling for 60 minutes here for the first race of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. So the driver that I have at the top of my list is the number 96 of Michael Kondakshiolu in a McLaren 720S GT3 for SideMax Motorworks. He is going to be starting on the pole. In second place, the number 757. That is going to be William Hendrickson in Mercedes-AMG GT3 for Jean Alesi Esports Motorsports Academy. Row 2 is the number 1 car. That is Cody Pride, a brand new driver here this season for PR Esports, alongside the 56 car. That will be driven by Honora Rose in a McLaren 720S GT3. Row number 3, the 25 car. That is going to be Cardin Liu, one of the Honda HPD Yas Pro America drivers. They just got this opportunity last weekend. Starting alongside the number 23 car, that will be Killian Ryan Meenan in Side Max Motorworks teammate to one of the other drivers I already mentioned. Row number 4, Lee in the number 67, Matt Lehman. That is the McLaren 720S Hill Mount Racing car alongside the 81. That is Chris Severt in Blackhawk Racing. Row number 5, it's going to be Hamza Gulzar in the number 14 alongside the number 10. That is Dylan Wiley, the BMW M6 GT3 for Wiley Racing. Row number 6 is going to be the number 94 car. That will be Josh Stafford, another HPD Yas Pro America driver, alongside that of the number 887. That will be Ryan Walker's Madhouse Racing McLaren 720S GT3. Starting in row number 7, the number 19 car, the number 19 car, that is going to be Philippe Simard, another past driver here in one of our championships in a BMW M6, alongside the number 40, Brian Canapan in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Row number 8 in the number 11 car is going to be Emile Carpentier in a Pancart Racing Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo. Alongside him, going to be starting in 16th place with the number 126 car. That is going to be Matthew Burgeon in the RLR Abruzzi Esports Aston Martin Vantage AMR GT3. There's a whole bunch of cars here, Eric. There's 48 of them to be exact, so we're not going to run down the entire rest of the order. You can see the names on the left-hand side of the screen, Eric, but 48 cars is a whole bunch to have on a racetrack, even one that's over 2.5 miles long. And as I mentioned earlier, the run down to turn 1, it's going to get frantic and hectic. We could see 3, we could see 4, we could see 5 wide down there. Can't win it in the first corner, but you certainly can lose it.
And that's going to be the thing, surviving the first few corners. In fact, surviving the first lap is going to play a big role in who comes out on top. But I will say, in some of the work that we've done to prepare for this race, the McLaren was right up there as one of the best cars to potentially have on this racetrack. And it's not all about the car, obviously. The driver is going to play a big role in this, and we've seen that already in qualifying. But if you look at the top 7 cars, I mean, as far as McLarens in this field, we've got 6 of them. 3 of them qualified in the top 7, so it looks as though that may be a vehicle of choice as far as being able to lay down a flyer here, but can it last the entire duration of this event? And I think that's going to be the big question here. We also may see some cars that run very well in traffic. You got to go down a little bit to find the highest running BMW in the field. That's back down to 13th when you get down to, I believe that's Simard, who is the highest qualifying BMW. So the mix of cars that make up this event as we get set to go racing here is really unique, and it's going to be fun to watch how each manufacturer is able to propel or excel here on this tough layout. And it worked in qualifying for a lot of the McLarens. Can they race well, and can they last throughout the 60-minute affair to keep those positive results going? Looks like we're a little more than a minute from finding out.
And you'll notice that the weather has cleared up here in Kyalami, so it's going to be a really hot day, actually, after the clouds have gone away and the rain has gone with it. That means that today we're going to be seeing some pretty greasy track surface conditions. Also want to mention that way back here, starting in 30th place, the Chris Forsberg Racing number 5, Brian Heitkotter, we talked about him finishing 2nd here the last time GT Rivals was here. Well, that 2nd place finish won him the championship, but if he wants to come out of here on top of the points, he's got to pass 29 drivers. It's going to be a tall task for him. All the way towards the tail, a couple Bentleys there. That's Jameek Smith in the number 123. He will bring up the rear in 48th position here. So we're going to have a pace lap to talk about some things, Eric, and we mentioned the track conditions. We talked about the drivers, and now let's talk about the stakes here a little bit. This is on a big stage here for GT World Challenge America Esports. In terms of bragging rights, to win one of these races is a pretty big deal, but there's a look down at the racetrack. We talked about it. 16 corners. It all starts with that run down through the kink in turn number 1 into Crowthorne. That's that sharp left-hander at the top right of your screen. Then through the Juxie sweep through turns 3 and 4 into Barbecue. That's turn number 5. Then the run down to Sunset. That's that sweeping right-hander that just in the middle of your screen there. Sunset downhill right-hander. It's a great corner to have with any sort of downforce. Then down on a couple gears onto the brakes into Clubhouse. Then a short straight down into the S's. The track falls away from here, Eric, and you're balancing your car here. A lot of the cars that have a very neutral balance. I'm looking at the Acura NSX GT3 Evo as a car that I would expect to excel here. Then into Lukop, turn number 10 and turn 11. Sets you all the way back up towards Mineshaft. The Crocodiles at turn 13 and 14. Cheetah in turn 15, and then finishing off the corner, or the lap, I should say, at turn number 16. Should also mention the different manufacturer diversity. You mentioned the 12 different manufacturers. I am looking squarely at Pride in the Porsche, starting in third place as one of my favorites, and the reason being Tom O'Gorman last season ran the Porsche for the last round here at Kyalami, and while he didn't have an amazing season, he did finish on the podium in a Porsche, so that platform seems to do really, really well here, but who knows what it's going to be, Eric. It's a new field, some new drivers, some new faces, and some familiar ones in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, and we're about to kick things off here for 60 minutes, and at the end of it, we're going to talk to a race winner, and we'll move on to the next round, but this is an exciting place to start a season, and with a field that's as strong as ever. 48 is about the biggest grid I think we've ever seen.
Original entry list called for 49, so apparently one of them was not able to make it. You mentioned the Porsches, though. Looking at the entry list coming in, that was one of the most populated cars in the field. Both the Porsches and McLarens, we had 6 drivers that were slated to start in those respective cars here this afternoon. And I think, you know, this is an opportunity to set the tone, not just for the race, but as you mentioned, for the start of the season. There's a lot on the line for these drivers, and to be able to kick off this opening round with a bit of a bang, this is a chance to not only put yourself out there as a contender to win here on this very tough track that we have here at Kyalami, but it's also an opportunity to kickstart your season with as much momentum as possible and try to ride that wave through the ever-changing calendar that will consist, as we mentioned, of not only some of these sprint races, but also a lot of endurance events as well. A lot at stake on the season, a lot at stake in this race, a lot at stake for this start, and that run in turn 2 that we keep hyping up, and that's with good reason, and we're about to see why. This is really monumental as far as how the season's going to pan out, and we're just a few corners away from getting this thing underway.
Well, you mentioned those endurance races, and the HPD, yes, Academy drivers I mentioned, well, they had to qualify to get that opportunity to race on that team, and they are going to join real HPD driver Carl Whitmer on that endurance team later this season. What an exciting way to get yourself in the motorsports world, to qualify your way in a video game, in a set of course a competizione, and then go out on the racetrack and actually compete with an HPD driver. That is the level of opportunity you get here at the GT World Challenge America Esports races, and that's so exciting. Wishing our friend Ryan Marine a good one. He couldn't make it here today, but we'll see him a little bit later in the season. So the typical duo, the pairing that you've seen in the booth here in the past, will join again later in the season. But Eric, thank you again for joining me this afternoon. It's going to be a beautiful day for racing at Kyalami Grand Prix Circuit. We've got 48 GT3 cars heading into the final corner, and it's time to turn them loose. 1 hour. They're going to have to roll all the way down here to the green flag, and as soon as they get it, they're going to turn them loose. 500 plus horsepower cars, 24 rows deep, and for 1 hour they're about to go racing in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Across the start-finish line, and green flag flies. We're racing at Kyalami in the first round of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Already the Mercedes pulls out ahead on the run down to turn 1. That's Hendrickson into turn 2, the sharp left-hander. Nice and tidy so far. A little bit of 3 wide here in the mid-pack. Now there's 4 wide in the mid-pack there as they get it sorted out. So far, so good. Incredibly clean start there, Eric. Very impressed with the fact that the field got that completely sorted out.
I have no idea how they were all pointed in the right direction still, because I was holding my breath that entire time. They came through turn 2, fanned out about 3 and 4 wide, but look at this race for the lead. Hendrickson got a masterful start up towards the front in that Mercedes, but he's got company. As a matter of fact, your pole sitters dropped about 3 spots here as they work their way through the second half of this racetrack, and already we're starting to see how tight this field is going to be here across the front 4, with your pole sitter getting kicked back to 3rd early in the going.
Yeah, Cody Pride jumped up a spot there in the Porsche into 2nd place as he tries to track down that Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo. Again, the Evo variant of the car. Just an update, essentially, aerodynamically and electronically to make the car even better off of the base platform of that Mercedes-AMG. But there is Michael Kondakcioglu in the number 96. We've seen him be incredibly quick in that Mercedes platform in the past, but now he's in the McLaren 720S GT3 looking very solid. And Nora Rose, who we've seen in the GT4 Championship last season, she is back here in the number 56, also in a McLaren. That's the white one you see in the backdrop. But for the race lead, Pride all over Hendrickson as they head down the hill and back up again towards turn 15. In the end of the lap, Pride drops 2 wheels off there in the dirt. Got to keep all 4 tires in the black stuff here, Eric. It can get pretty wild pretty quick if you don't keep the tires on the track.
And as we come down to complete this first lap, we're going to see Hendrickson lead the opening circuit, but Pride really tempting fate there on that corner exit. A lot of runoff room around this racetrack, but it does narrow up in some sectors, and he actually got the left side tires off into the grass. That's certainly going to upset the handle of that Porsche if he keeps that up. But we are watching Kondakcioglu continue to try to close up here in this third spot, and we talk about patience, and you mentioned this coming into our race here tonight. This is someone who has been here before. We pencil him in as someone who could be a favorite, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was keeping himself pretty much at check as far as getting too aggressive too early in this 60-minute affair. Since falling back to third, just keeping pace, keeping the top two in sight. Everything may still be going according to plan to the driver of that McLaren as he's stalking the top two right now.
Well, the race started very, very clean. We saw turn 2 go swimmingly, but there were a couple incidents farther back in the pack. It was the number 88 car, that, of course, being Zach Etier for the Racing Sim Tools Esports team. He had an incident down in the hairpin, and the number 12 car of Andrew Berg in the Bentley Continental GT3 for THR Esports, he had an issue towards the end of the lap at Cheetah. And for the race lead, here comes Pride down to the inside of the Porsche and takes the lead away as they come out of the corner and slams the door shut. The Mercedes squeezing on the outside, now side by side for the race lead again here, Eric, as they battle down the hill.
Hendrickson had a great run on the outside. Pride tried to shut the door on him, thought better of it. Now he'll cement the top spot here as they come off the right-handed corner, and that's going to accordion the field back together, maybe, as the fight for second starts to rage on here. Starting to see the front four now come into a front five, perhaps, but what could Pride do in that Porsche now that he's got the lead? Hendrickson playing defense now, trying to hold on to second as they come back on the main straightaway, but already we're seeing some good racing for the top spot here early in this one, and it's Pride with the lead.
A strong lap by Pride, and he's going to take that Porsche 911 GT3R out to the front. The strength of that car getting up off of the corners with that engine rear mounted. It's the only car like it in the field with the engine behind the rear axle, and it is certainly a fantastic race car. But Hendrickson has to give up that lead there in the early going, drops to second. Now the pressure coming from behind in the form of Kondakcioglu. Rose Severk behind, making the rest of that top five that you were mentioning 4 minutes in, and it's a 5, make it 6 horse race for the race lead. Here's a battle for 7th. Cardin Liu in the numbers the 25 car in 7th place, and Lehman in the 8th spot in the number 67 McLaren, running him down the hill. Again, remember, Cardin Liu qualified to run this Acura NSX GT3 last weekend, so not new to the car per se, but new to the team and already impressing, but we'll see how much he can defend from the McLaren behind.
We're on board now with Matt Lehman here, kind of getting an idea of how much of that curve they're attacking through some of these very fast corners. There's a look at the man in his office, and Lehman, who is already trying to make that McLaren a little bit more closer towards the front here. And I enjoy watching him close in under braking here, and we talked about it. You know, we talk about the Aston Martins maybe being very good on a track layout similar to this. The same thing with the McLaren tracks like Suzuka, Barcelona, Imola, and here at Kyalami, and we're starting to see why. They're making their way a little bit closer towards the front. In fact, now 4 of them running the top 10, and Lehman here getting a little bit busy there. You don't want to catch too much of that curving through some of those fast right-handers because it could upset the balance of the car, but he has got his sights set here on Lewis. He tries to close up for what is that fight for 7th.
It's a twin-turbo V8 in that McLaren versus the twin-turbo V6 that is in the Acura NSX GT3 Evo. There's a pair of McLarens. That is Honor Rose in the number 56, the white and blue, chasing Kondakcioglu in the number 96. This is a battle for 3rd place down into turn number 2 for what I believe is the 4th time now. Take a look at the temperature on the upper right of the screen. 25 degrees Celsius in the air. The track is 32 degrees Celsius. That's not incredibly hot, Eric, but throughout the day that can increase. And of course, Assetto Corsa Competizione modeling that temperature change throughout the racing surface that can adjust the grip levels that drivers are experiencing. But look at the lead expanding now. Pride pulling 4 to 5 car lengths on Hendrickson, who's still feeling pressure from Kondakcioglu, and it's still a hornet's nest for 2nd place. I'm not sure we've seen them completely sorted out just yet.
And as we see Honor Rose hard at work here, a little bit of a counter steer there off the corner, had to correct a little bit as that car loosened up on corner exit. And I'm actually really impressed with Honor Rose right now because it looked as though that she got herself up into that battle with the top 3 by virtue of them tussling for the race lead, but they haven't been able to shake her just yet. In fact, she appears to be counseling a bit of patience herself, riding behind Kondakcioglu, fellow McLaren driver, and of course Hendrickson, who led the opening lap by getting that great start on the outside of the front row, now has his hands full in that Mercedes-AMG entry, trying to fend off these 2 behind in what is a race for 2nd on back, while Pride is starting to open up a bit of a gap here in the tune of about 1 second as we drop a little bit further back in the field.
As we get a little bit deeper into this race, about 10 minutes in, the drivers are going to start to click off some laps and start to race the racetrack, and not necessarily their competitors. But one guy who's still having to race, that's Josh Staff, and another one of those HPD Yas Academy drivers who had just qualified to run that car. But you see this tightening up here. I'm curious to see how much these drivers are going to experiment with the slipstreams in these cars. These long straightaways here, Eric, that front car is going to punch a big hole in the air. To follow them through is going to make you faster in the straightaways. It's going to slow you down in the corners, though, because all these wings and devices need some surface area to work with, as Kondakcioglu just outbrakes Hendrickson, dives underneath through turn 2, takes a spot away, move Kondakcioglu to second.
That was a close call there. Kondakcioglu being able to benefit from that slipstream you were just talking about on the main straightaway, as he pulled up quickly to the backside of Hendrickson and elected not to wait in line any longer. And it looks as though that he's not alone. He's got an Rose coming through with him. So the podium's going to shuffle up here with Hendrickson going to P2. Make Kondakcioglu, make that Hendrickson falling back a little bit here. Rose was not able to make that move. She had a look. And now we drop back here to the driver who is running in 5th spot, Chris Sievert in the 81, running in that top 5 now, all over the backside of Rose, who struggles a little bit there through the left-hander.
Yeah, Sievert in the Aston Martin Vantage GT3, and pressure from behind. That's, whoa, big slide for Hamza Golzar in the Ferrari 488. He gathers it back up as we see Sievert have the other Aston Martin. That is the number 23 of Ryan Meenan going for position there, but some side-by-side action and a great save by Hamza Golzar. Wanted to briefly mention the driver of Brian Heitkotter. He's up 4 spots from his 30th starting position. I want to keep an eye on him all day long because I'm expecting him to be a top 15 or top 10 driver by the end of this race. I know it's a tall ask, but Heitkotter has real-world racing experience, currently races in a grassroots level, but also has raced professionally in World Challenge and other series across America and the world, and also is the 2011 GT Academy winner. So he's been there, done that, and we're going to keep an eye on Heitkotter all day today. But Sievert up inside the top 5, was battling for 4th, but now feeling pressure from 6th.
We see Sievert there, hard at work in that Black Hawk Racing entry, doing everything that he can to keep that Aston Martin up towards the front of the field. And we also mentioned that they too may be a car of choice when it comes to a track like Kyalami, and we're starting to see that in the results right now, as we got a pair of them running back-to-back there, with Ryan Meenan just behind. Interesting to see, though, since moving back up into P2, as we watch these cars kind of funnel out. We'll take a look at a battle that's happening a little bit further back here for position. But now that we've seen Kondakcioglu get up to 2nd, I was curious as to what that margin was going to do for the front runners, and we'll see if it does, in fact, start to narrow up a little bit as the race moves on. But we got a couple of movers and shakers here just outside the top 10, trying to take advantage of the first portion of this event and see what they can do to move on up through the field. And there's great battles all over, as we're 10 minutes into this race, and we're still seeing them scrap it up for a position all throughout the field.
There's an Rose having a big look up the inside of Hendrickson. That's a real tight look down there, and that was probably wise to back out. And a lot of this, Eric, is knowing when you can't make a pass. Yes, there's a gap there. Yes, the door is open, but it doesn't always mean you have to jam the car through it. Patience will sometimes pay off, and if you're faster than the guy now, you might be faster than him 5 laps from now. So set up a good pass. Don't force a low percentage move that will get you into trouble or draw a penalty from the stewards. So I liked the restraint that we saw from Rose there, and she'll probably gear up on Hendrickson and get by a few laps from now. A little bit wide, though. We've seen a couple drivers dip tires off there at the exit at turn 15. And as you mentioned in the pre-race, Eric, there is plenty of space, runoff room here, but there are a few places where there's nasty curbs or gravel that will catch you if you're run wide. So it's best to keep the tires within the white lines and on the grippiest stuff out there.
And that'll certainly impact every bit of handling characteristic that these drivers are facing with these conditions. It's got enough runoff to be FIA certified. Remember, Formula One did used to run here back in the day. In fact, if we go back a couple of years, they did have the GT Challenge Endurance Race, a 9-hour event here back in 2019. So it is prepped and secure and safe for enough runoff area to allow a little bit of forgiveness should you have a major moment. But you do see those grass patches that outline some of the curbing, and we talked about it already a couple times today, where you will utilize that curbing, but you will try not to abuse that curbing, because there is a limitation to it on the end in the form of some ugly stuff to get on the tread of the tires. You don't want that to happen, because it could point you in the wrong direction as we now move up here to what continues to be a great battle for 3rd spot. And Kyle, we also mentioned the lead up to the green flag, setting the tone, and that's not only about performance, but it's also about driver etiquette. And you talk about being a little bit a little bit patient, perhaps, as we see Anora Rose move down the inside and get by Hendrickson here for third on what was a clean pass. Obviously, you don't want to try to ruffle feathers at any point in the season, let alone early in the season. So watching Anora Rose being able to counsel patience in that move as she moves up into a podium spot here could pay off in the long run of the season. She made that pass cleanly and is now up into P3.
We had a great pass there, and that was just door wide open and plenty of room to drive and outbrake Hendrickson there. But we also saw her go defensive in the next corner to just cover her bases. Once she made that pass, she moved on to the defensive line to keep Hendrickson from going right back by. Great driving by Anora Rose, and she's now up into third. 2 McLarens and a Porsche on the top steps right now. Hendrickson falls to fourth. Sievert in fifth, and the number 81 is back just a little ways. Then Ryan Meenan, Liu, Lehman, Walker, and Patterson, another one of those HPD Yas Academy drivers, down in 10th. Philippe Samard in M6 GT3 is back in 11th place. We've seen Philippe before. He has also won races before in this series back last season, so good to see him back, this time not in a Ferrari, in a BMW, which is a bit of a change. A couple incidents so far. There was a multi-car accident in a little while ago on lap number 5. We also saw the 833 just have an issue a little while ago, but nothing significant enough to pull away from the battle at the top of the order here. So Pride out front right now continues to lead this race. That gap is still growing, getting a little scrappy behind Hendrickson and Sievert though, with Cardin Liu, Ryan Meenan. They've swapped spots, and keep an eye on Lehman in the number 67 back in 8th. He's lingering back there as well.
We've watched Lehman at work a little bit already in this broadcast, and he's somebody who seems to have the pace to perhaps get up there and maybe match some of the fellow McLarens in the field who are now in podium spots up the road, as we check in now on this driver who rides in 6th position, and Ryan Meenan, who's right smack dab in the middle of all that fighting that's going on. He's got Sievert out the windshield, Liu out the back spoiler, and this is all for positions that are just in and around about the top 5 here. That continues to rage on. Really good racing throughout the pack. We saw Pride pull out to that 1.5 second lead or so. Pride's been able to maintain that, but as far as what's going on in the midfield, this is what we're seeing. We're looking at Ryan Meenan now hard at work in that number 23 entry, doing everything that he can to try to ensure that he gets that Side Max Motorworks entry up towards the top 5 or perhaps a podium before this race is out. But we're hitting that quarter of the way mark here, Kyle, and I'm not sure how much of a rubber band effect that we're going to see as far as comers and goers in this sprint race, but it is in fact possible, as Hendrickson has been one of the few who is struggling with the handle of his car the longer that this race goes on. We may start to see a couple of others experience similar fortunes here as we start getting closer to the pay window.
I think we're also going to start to see, with how close the field is here, the strengths and weaknesses of each individual GT3 platform. Now, of course, SRO has balance of performance, and so does the Assetto Corsa Competizione. These cars drive so similar to their real-world counterparts and also have a lot of the same characteristics. So taking a car like the Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo that Hendrickson is driving, you'd expect that car to be incredibly fast in a straight line and be super torquey. Well, the reality is that car is actually much better at tighter, twistier, more technical circuits, which is quite contrary to what you would think it would be good at just by looking and listening to it. But Hendrickson is going to have to battle through it here just a little bit. I don't think the Mercedes is the strongest car to have here today, but over the course of the season, they're all going to sort of even out. I think today the Porsche and the McLarens are probably going to be the cars to have just based on their balance and the levels of downforce that they make and where their weight is balanced. But you see a couple Aston Martins up here towards the front. Of course, Ryan Meenan and Sievert representing the Aston Martin brands here this afternoon in 5th and 6th. They're having a good run. And of course, Acura with Cardin Liu, a great performance in his first ever race for HPD Yas Motorsports. They're up to 7th. That's the highest running car from that team with Cardin Liu behind the wheel.
Cardin Liu in this battle has been fun to watch, and Hendrickson is still starting to struggle. You saw him wash up wide there off the final corner. That's going to kill the momentum on the straightaway here. As a matter of fact, that was Rose who had a bobble from third, so that stacks up the battle for third here as they're going to race their way up to turn 2 with Sievert looking down low to try to squeeze up to a potential podium spot here. Sievert still up alongside. Hendrickson's got the spot. Rose pinned up top, now back to the bottom. This is a great race we got going on here for third on back.
Fantastic stuff now, side by side, leaning on each other, door to door, paint trading there for 4th place on back. This is spectacular stuff. Back to 3rd place, Hendrickson goes. Rose as slots back in front of Sievert there. That was really, really dicey as they head down the hill through turn number 6, but that was some incredible racing, leaning on each other just a little bit, Eric. Trading paint's totally fine as long as everyone comes out the other side. That's all we like to see here in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Some solid racing there. A little bit of leaning on each other, and as you mentioned, setting the tone, and so far the tone is elbows out here towards the front of the field.
Yeah, while we were watching that, right out the corner of my eye, I think we did actually have some contact and a car go around backwards in that battle that was consisting that of Lehman, Walker, and company. So we'll keep an eye on the scoring pile on there to see which one of those drivers may have had some misfortune, because we were keeping pace on that battle that was happening there as well. But something must have happened to Honor Rose to kind of check up that battle and allow Hendrickson a chance to get back by. And unfortunately, it looks as though that the driver who was involved in that incident there was that of Lou, who we were monitoring all throughout this event in car 25. Car Lou, one of the Honda drivers in the field. Unfortunately, that top 10 run appears to have come undone here at about the 43-minute mark as we continue to watch Rose try to battle back and get back up into the spot at which she held about a lap ago before the hiccup off the final corner cost P3 to turn it back over to Hendrickson.
That's really frustrating for Cardin Lou. Had such a good run going. We'll see if he can recover from that. Checking in on Honor Rose the last time around, she had run about half a second off pace, so maybe a bobble somewhere off course or just dropping a tire off. That could be enough to get you right back into the mix. Now we're on board with Philippe Samard looking over the shoulder here. See the lap timer up on the dash and the gear indicator there as we watch the M6 chase down Zach Patterson, who is now the torch holder for HPD Yas Motorsports. They are now running in 9th, so a couple spots back from where they were, but now Patterson is the one carrying the torch for that team with Samard pressuring in the BMW from behind. This is a battle for 9th, just inside the top 10 as they head down into Clubhouse.
And talking about Samard, he's operating this race the best way that I think one could. We highlighted him earlier as one of the few, perhaps the only BMW that we've got in the field here. In fact, we've got a few of them. He's definitely the highest running that we've got in the field right now, with Samard currently rounding out P10. But we noted the fact that Samard started outside the top 10, has dodged all the cars that have had misfortune in and around him so far, and is working his way up to the backside of Patterson here for position, but not forcing the issue. Exercising driver's etiquette, doing all the right things here with a lot more position still further up the road for him to grab before this race is over as we inch closer to the 1/3 mark in this event. So Samard having that perfect day, considering the fact that he did not get the lap down that he wanted in qualifying. If you're trying to, and I hate to overuse the phrase, set the tone for the start of your season, up to this point, Samard is doing everything perfectly considering the cards that he was dealt when they came down for the green flag. Great run so far and looking for more.
Yeah, it continues to keep pressure on Patterson here for 9th, so we might see a run down towards turn number 2. Almost 20 minutes into this race, and have a look down towards the bottom of the timing tower. You see a driver pop in there, Brian Heitkotter, up now 7 spots. The progress is slow, but it is positive for Heitkotter in the Chris Forsberg Racing number 5 Nissan, so he will continue to climb up the order. And we'll have a look at some of the other drivers. Again, Simon Fisher we've seen in the past in GT4 ranks in this championship before. Last season it was a multi-class championship with both GT3 and GT4 sharing the racetrack, so Fisher making the transition. Cardin Lou showing up back in 12th, so just that momentary slip up. He's got that Acura NSX GT3 Evo back inside the top 15. Josh Staffen right now running 14th, and I should just mention how incredible it is to me that Josh Staffen is running in 14th in this field. We've seen Staffen run in the past back in GT Rivals. He was unstoppably good, and that just goes to show you how much this championship has come up in terms of the level of competition in the last 12 months. It's unbelievable that Staffen is fighting for 14th right now. He's one of the best sim racers I've seen, period, and he's barely inside the top 15. That's really incredible.
Staffen is somebody who you told me before we came on air as far as guys to keep our eyes on, and in an effort to try to handicap the field. And anytime that you kick off a season of this nature like we are here today with the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, you kind of want to know who the favorites are going into it, and that was one of the names that you brought up right off the jump. And I'm with you. The fact that we're seeing Staffen right now in about the 14th spot as they run, a bit surprising, but it's not really anything to say negatively about Staffen and his performance. Is more of accolade to the rest of the field being able to step up their game, and some of the names that we're able to see battle for position like this here in this race for 3rd that continues on, with Hendrickson still trying to hold on to that last spot on the podium over that of Honor Rose, who had it momentarily, lost it a few laps ago, now trying to do all possible to try to get that McLaren back up and around that Mercedes in that race for 3rd spot.
Honora Rose, last time by, around a 142.252. That was 0.3 slower than Hendrickson, but the lap prior, she was half a second faster. So still trending in a positive direction. We mentioned earlier that following drivers on a straightaway, Eric, that's a great thing. Keeps you in the slipstream, makes you go faster. Follow too closely in the corners, you're going to get what I call aero wash. The front car is going to displace a whole bunch of air that you need to make all these big swoopy wings that are essentially airplane wings turned upside down. You need air on the wings to go fast around here at Kyalami, and if you're following too closely behind another driver through some of those corners, you're going to lose some effectiveness, some efficiency in those airfoils. So Honora Rose, as soon as she gets close to the back of Hendrickson, she's going to get stuck there. So that's when you have to get a little bit creative, which she was earlier with that big dive into Clubhouse. We'll see if she can repeat and have lightning strike twice here and get back into third.
You bring up an exceptional point about the aerodynamic beauty that is a number of these GT3 cars. In fact, all of them. I mean, there's a lot of engineering and characteristics that go into the development of these cars to make them fast in their own right. And although they race well, and they've proven it time and time again as they are here today, they are designed, in fact, to run by themselves and lay down flyers without traffic in or around them. So it does, in fact, disrupt the handle. And that's where we truly pull the talent of the driver. As you see, Honora Rose getting all 4 tires up over the curbing, that time to the right-hander. That's where we truly are able to utilize the barometer scale as far as driver talent and ability, being able to combat the aerodynamic deficiencies that they're faced by running in traffic or behind another car and having to overcome that to try to make up some positions, as we're trying to see Rose do. But how about this scrap here, 3 abreast outside the top 20? This is some good stuff happening here in the midfield.
Look at the 21 car. That's the yellow BMW you're having a look at there. There's Tadas Litkis, I think, just went by in the Bentley, and now it's Santiago in the 216. Now to the inside of the 21 car. And, of course, that's Matt Santiago for Turn 1 Pro in a Porsche 911 GT3R, just getting ahead as they run down the front straightaway. 3 wide, though, this deep into the race. Eric, we're far from over. We knew that. But there's a slow car there on the front straightaway. Can't quite get a look at who that is there. But one car pulled off the driver's right on the front stretch. Caution flag for that sector. Now it's back green. But lots of shuffling, and things can happen in the blink of an eye. So even if you're back here in 27th, you're still barely, in the bottom half of the field. There's so many cars out here that running 28th, you're in the upper or the lower mid pack. So keep fighting. There's lots of people to race. There's a lot of races in this season. Don't give up. There's still a lot of points to make.
And you could see, something could happen to a car running up in front of you. I believe that was Thomas Lavoie, one of the Porsche 911 GT3Rs at the field for EGT Motorsport, who was running up in about the 20th position that pulled over there on the front straightaway. So Lavoie has now plummeted down the running order. And I do want to give a shout here. I just happened to notice the car up in front of what we're following here with Moisen is that we mentioned that was Matt Santiago, another one of the Porsche 911s in the field. I love that Gulf-looking livery that he's got on that car. The McLaren F1 team is actually running something very similar to that in Monaco. That's a throwback of all throwbacks when it comes to sports car racing. We love seeing that style of a livery on a car. How about Ryan Meenan? We were talking earlier that Ryan Meenan was actually up in about a top 5 spot, got off-road a little bit. That allowed Senard and company to get through. He's now kind of in a bit of a comeback mode here as we watch that car navigate his way up through the kink towards turn 2. This is someone who had top 5 pace, got off the road through one of the sweeping corners through the S's a couple laps ago, and he's now trying to get himself back up there. We got other drivers trying to scrap their way up into the top 10, if at all possible, as we're not even halfway yet. So there's still a long way to go, and these battles for position are going to continue to intensify.
There's Canapan in the Lamborghini. That's the number 40 car chasing the Acura NSX GT3. Now, is that Cardin Lou? Indeed it is. So Lou moving forward again after the mistake a little while ago. Also have to report that Hamza Gulzar in the number 14 has retired. Now, there's a spin down there in turn number 1. That's a 727 Bentley. That is Tadas Litkis for Drungius and Smell Motorsports as he's looped it around and gets back rolling. But turn 2 down there, Eric, that's a trouble spot. We've seen that happen a couple times in the past as the pit window does open. So drivers do have the opportunity to come down pit lane should they choose to do that.
To be an opportunity here to perhaps see if you could find any bit of an edge possible if you want to come in for service, for an opportunity to maybe switch things up a little bit or get yourself in a better position as opposed to the competition, as we now check in on Simon Fisher right now for the RST Esports entry. And I got to say, we're starting to see some proof in that top 10, or at least around that top 10, for drivers who have had problems, who have already been able to battle back to salvage the day on what is the opening round of this season. We talk about trying to start yourself off on the right foot and whatnot. We already started to see drivers like Cardin Liu and a couple of others who have not had the best of luck in the first half of this event, starting to cycle their way back up towards the front. It's important that if you have a mistake or an off-track incident or excursion, that you do not let it unravel your entire day, because that could be a championship-winning effort when all's said and done at the end of the season. The fact that you did not give up the ghost when things went wrong initially, that's going to pay off. And here we go. Pit road's starting to be a busy place here, Kyle. We're starting to see them come in immediately.
Yeah, cars coming on down. There actually is a compulsory pit stop that you have to take 1 liter of fuel, which is essentially you just got to come in, stop in your box, and get back rolling. So that's going to change the strategy here just a little bit, Eric, for some of those that are pitting earlier versus later. Everyone knows the undercut maneuver, but with tires not necessarily going on these cars, I'm not really sure that there's much strategy opportunity here. This is more of an opportunity to come on down pit lane and gain time on pit entry or exit. Of course, there's opportunity to make mistakes there as well, Eric. So we're going to see drivers potentially throw the race away, and for some, they might be able to get a minuscule advantage here, but they're going to have to really go to work to do that.
You mentioned the possibility of mistakes. The pit entry here at Kyalami is a little bit awkward. As a matter of fact, you have to commit to the pit entry before the final corner. So as they come through turn 16, which is that really sharp and tight left-handed corner, as we see there, it looks as though that their race control is actually deeming a couple of the penalties, or at least deeming a couple racing incidents that have taken place so far here today. But it's a part of the racetrack in an area where these drivers are not accustomed to having to tackle or challenge throughout their preparation for this event. So you're right. It's an opportunity to truly make a catastrophic mistake, or to perhaps pick up incremental time that you've not been able to do so on the racetrack by finding the limit while trying to get onto that pit lane as well as off of it. It's something that they're going to keep in mind. The pit exit's not as difficult because you actually blend up on towards that main straightaway right about where the kink is before you get to the hard braking turn 2. So you have enough time to get back up and in line. But pit entry, though, I think is going to be the determining factor as to who's able to gain time and lose time while having to come in and out for that 1 liter of fuel.
I think Nora Rose is one of the drivers that should be looking at coming to pit lane immediately, or at least try to beat Hendrickson to pit lane. She's got Hendrickson holding her up right now. We've seen her following him for lap after lap after lap. She's unable to get by. This is the perfect opportunity to come hit pit lane, make your stop, and then get back out there and hopefully blend into some clean, clear racetrack, some clean air to get on the nose of your car and run some personal best. She's been flying when she's on her own, but she's been struggling tucked in behind other cars. So this is her opportunity to get some clean, fresh racetrack, and I think she should come sooner than later.
I agree. This would be a chance. And we mentioned the fact that, all right, so there's not going to be that much of an undercut-overcut opportunity because they're coming down for fuel. But we talked about the aerodynamics being so important. And Kyle, you bring up a great point. I mean, that's an opportunity here. You may not want to follow Hendrickson down here unless you absolutely have to. But if you want to give your car, especially we talk about how well that the McLarens are able to stretch their legs on this racetrack, as we see William Hendrickson at work here. If you get yourself in a position, it looks like they're both going to elect to stay out here, as we saw a couple of cars behind. I believe Sievert may have ducked for the pit lane, but it looks like they're going to elect to stay out for the time being here, at least for the drivers who are in 3rd and 4th spot. But I agree. If I'm a Nora Rose, get an opportunity here to get yourself a little bit of separation as far as traffic on the racetrack. Get some clean air on the nose of that McLaren and see if that will parlay into you being able to make the pass on Hendrickson once he elects to come down for service. I think that would have been the best move here, but we're starting to look at a scenario playing out where they may end up coming in together.
To the left-hand side of the screen, the white box with the P in it, that designates drivers that are on pit lane right now. You see Simard, Ryan Meenan, Cardin Liu, Canapan, and more all on pit lane taking their service. And you can see the yellow box. You see the yellow box with the 1. That's the drivers who have not yet hit pit lane. The drivers with the green, they are good to go. So there's Canapan now leaving pit lane. Look how crazy this is as they head down into turn 1. Big dive from the 23 car into turn number 2. It's a frantic mess as they leave pit lane and get right back into the thick of it here, Eric. As soon as that pit stop is over, the gloves come off and they go racing again.
Some of the names that we see here, like that of a Simard and Ryan Meenan, like they've come down for service, we can presume already, because of the fact they're running up in the top 10 as things get really close here. Wick Knopin trying not to bounce off the side there of the competition as Ryan Meenan tries to battle back now on the outside of the sweeping right-handed corner. Now getting set to stomp on the blinders here at Clubhouse at turn 7, with Ryan Meenan having a bit of an edge there as they come into the corner. That's a great fight for position. Little bit of rubbing, little bit of door banging, but not enough to put these drivers off, as we've yet to see how things are truly going to cycle out once everyone's come down for their fuel stop here. But this battle for position continues to rage on.
and some other drivers that while we're talking about the strategy of when to hit pit lane, I mentioned Brian Heitkotter earlier in the race. Kostovich in the number 240, he's up in 13th. None of those drivers in the top 13 have made their pit stop yet, so as soon as they come on down, they're going to lose some of this track position, but they're going to stay out for the same reason the others came in, because now with everyone peeling out of the way, you have clean, clear racetrack. Go run the fastest laps that you can without anybody distracting you, and that will mean that when you blend back into traffic, hopefully you've gained a little bit on the drivers around you, but it's very, very circumstantial as we see a handful of drivers come to hit pit lane.
We've seen a bunch blend out into traffic and battles like we've seen so far. Here's an Rose, though, coming off the pit lane. So it looks as though that Anor did elect to come down for service. Not going to put Anor in the most cleanest of places on the racetrack. You see a couple of cars still up ahead. But that was the decision by Anor Rose to come down. Not with Hendrickson. We don't see that Mercedes in the near vicinity of Anor Rose right now. So this may be an opportunity here to at least get Anor in a position to lay down a couple of consistent lap times that may allow her to leapfrog Hendrickson once he comes down for service, but I don't think that's the kind of clear track that Anor may have been hoping for here. There's still some traffic up ahead that may hinder the performance and balance of that car throughout the duration of this final run to the checkers, but we'll see how it all pans out here with now under 28 minutes to go in this race.
I think what Anor Rose is hoping for is that anybody in front of her now, the speed difference between them and her is now going to be a lot more significant than it was with Hendrickson. Here's a look at your race leader. We haven't talked about him a whole lot since he got out front, but that's Cody Pride for PPR Esports. Continues to lay down very impressive lap times and just sort of on cruise control right now. His last lap of 141.7 continues to be one of the quickest cars on the racetrack, and just establishing a sizable lead. It's about 1.1 seconds over Kandaxioglu. So I think that Pride is probably the favorite to win this race based on his performance so far, but there's still a lot of racing left to go, and we'll see how the pit stops shake things up.
We'll drop back here to a battle position because it looks like about the top 7 or 8 cars have yet to come down for their stop just yet, and we haven't even talked about the potential of traffic just yet with 48 cars coming down for the green flag in this race. But how about Ryan Reedhead right now? Kind of watching his performance and his potential here. The driver in the Lexus for Helix Racing, doing everything possible to get up there and try to move further up the running order. The car in front, it doesn't appear has come down for service just yet. But this is a battle that has taken place just outside the top 20. And again, a lot of these positions remain somewhat relative as a number of drivers have stopped and fuel already. In fact, we're going to see Reedhead pick up a position there by a driver who's yet to stop. And these battles are going to continue to kind of come and go in a number of positions until everybody cycles through their bit for service. But we're still seeing a lot of cars running in very close proximity to one another with no positions determined or final as of yet. And race control has been relatively busy as well with a lot of the incidents that have taken place so far here today, and we see that on the bottom portion of your screen.
Yeah, there's the 99 avoidable contact penalty to that Audi for an issue. Again, avoidable contact essentially means you hit somebody and you could have avoided it and it was your fault, essentially is what that means. So that 99 will have to come hit pit lane. There's Brian Heitkotter in the Chris Forsberg Racing Nissan GT3 as we have our race leader on pit lane and now peeling back off. And now the question is, where is Anor Rose in relation to Cody Pride as the Pride machine blends back onto the racetrack? I'm really curious to see what this gap is going to look like. There is Anor Rose heading into turn number 16 right now, or turn 15 rather. So Pride's going to have a pretty sizable lead here, Eric. It's going to be hard for Anor Rose to run him down if Pride continues to lap at the pace that he was earlier in the race.
We also saw Hendrickson came down as well, as did Kandaxioglu. So all the front runners at this point have now come down for service. So this is pretty much going to be a straight up 25-minute or so shootout to end this race here at Kyalami, and it's been all Cody Pride. And you know, one of the things we haven't talked about yet, Kyle, and we saw it with Cody in traffic, is traffic. I mean, you know, with a field of this depth and this size, we were talking about the importance for Anor Rose and clean air on the nose in that McLaren. I mean, the same applies to the Porsche 911 with Pride, who has led pretty much since lap 3 of this event. He's going to find himself in and around some competitors that he has not been around all day, who have not yet quite been able to figure out this track or their respective cars just yet. And there's a chance for that to, you know, put that 1.5 second lead that he has right now in jeopardy to the McLaren that currently rides in second and Kandaxioglu. So this thing is not over by any stretch of the imagination, even though we're past halfway and Pride's kind of dominated. There's some elements of this race that are going to start to pop up here as we get closer to the checkered flag.
Well, We'll have a look at the gap on the left-hand side of your screen, 1.5 seconds, or at least it was. Now it's 1.9. Kandaxioglu is close enough to Pride that there is still opportunity for him to go run Pride down, especially getting into traffic. We should note, though, that Hendrickson had an amazing 32-second stop from pit in to pit out. Honor Rose was 32.5, so a significant gain there for Hendrickson in pit lane. On board now with Walker on the downhill. Look at the McLarens in the top 10. There is a whole bunch of those swoopy decals there in the top 10, and it's looking really strong. Porsche, McLaren, Mercedes, McLaren, Aston Martin, the top 5. Our first Acura NSX GT3 Evo with the HPD Yas Academy drivers. That would be Zach Patterson in 8th. Again, a really strong debut for Patterson for this team.
And then, of course, we mentioned Samard on a number of occasions. Of course, Ryan Meenan, another one of the Aston Martins in the field. So they're doing, 2 of the top 9 are represented by the Aston Martin brand. And we got Samard representing the BMWs very well here today with that consistent top 10 run after being able to avoid any of the incidents potentially on the racetrack. But how about Ryan Walker doing a superb job here? And look at him. I love these shots that we're able to bring to those who are watching along with us. Calm, cool, collected, very busy hands. It's a bit of a workout to get around a racetrack like this for 1 hour's time. Once we get down to, I'm sure, the endurance races, these drivers are going to be worn out with some of the tasks at hand. But Walker's doing an amazing job so far, running in 7th, trying to close up here on the back of Lehman. A pair of McLaren's going to duke it out here for a spot outside the top 5, late to go into this one. And again, even though we've run a number of laps, everybody had to come down for their liter of fuel stop and service. We still got a lot of fights for position taking place here throughout the top 10 and throughout the entire field.
And another thing to consider, again, none of these drivers were going to change tires because that would have been too much time to spend in pit lane. You would have essentially handicapped your race right from the very beginning. Now, the drivers, because they didn't take tires, drivers that are being hard on their equipment, they're sliding their cars around, they're trying to get everything they can out of it. They might run out of tire towards the end of this race and really start to hurt their pace. So for everyone that came down pit lane that has already been beating up on their car, they might want to consider backing it down a little bit, cooling everything off to have a little bit of machine left for the last 22 minutes of this race. Especially Michael Kandaxioglu, because he lost about 0.3 of a second to Pride in the pit lane. He's got to make back up on the racetrack now. And 0.3 in the pits is a lot more than 0.3, or 0.3 on the racetrack, I should say, is a lot more than 0.3 in the pits. So there's a lot of work for Kandaxioglu to do to get back to that race leader. Here's the number 6 car. That, of course, is Carl Matheson, the KLMP Racing Porsche 911 GT3R, battling right behind Gobi in the number 49, that vehicle for Map 1 Racing in a McLaren 720S GT3. And just behind them, Josh Staffen in the number 94, down in 19th place, continuing to run top 20. But I would say for Staffen and Staffen's normal race, I would say this is a bit of a struggle for him. I'm sure he'd be free to admit that as well. I think he would say the same thing, that this has not been one of the races that I think he would write home about, but that's just going to drive him even more. Sac-Loutier had to take a big slide on the downhill. This is all the way back in 36, battling Thomas Littkus in the 727, who we saw turned around in turn 1 earlier. So Littkus trying to drive back forward after that spin.
And in a field as deep as what we have here today, Littkus so far doing a good job to try to battle back from that bit of a misfortune that we saw earlier in turn 2. But you mentioned, making sure that you have enough tire, as Littkus there using all the available runoff there as they came through, cheated that time through turn 15. But Cloutier is someone who, first time that I've seen, at least from our perspective here, somebody get really, really sideways, getting back to the power, trying to put everything that he has in that Lamborghini, or that Ferrari, I should say, down to the power to the pavement, and got real sideways and had a counter steer pretty aggressively, and now going to dive to the bottom here of Littkus for position in 2. They bounce off one another, and this battle is going to continue on here off the corner, but trying to make sure you get enough rear tire in you for the final 20-minute run at the checker is going to be very important, and we're seeing that unfold here in this race. It's happening outside the top 30.
Looks like Pierre-Olivier Cloutier finally gets that pass done in the AGT Motorsport Ferrari. Now, that was a bit aggressive, a little bit of a side swipe there, but at the same time, he was fully alongside into the braking zone and into the corner, so one could argue that Littkus probably should have conceded a little bit more. There was a little bit of room given, maybe not quite enough, but of course, everyone's going to come out the other side going the same direction, so I would say that's free and clear of any sort of steward decision, which is always good to see. Back up here to 7th place. That, of course, is the number 887, who we haven't talked about a whole lot. That's Ryan Walker, the Madhouse Racing McLaren 720S. He has had a really solid day and continues to climb forward. Again, generally, if we talk about you here on the broadcast, you're either having a fantastic day or a really bad day. And sometimes, if you're not being talked about, that's a good thing. You're just having an okay day. okay. And okay days are okay to have, Eric.
Absolutely, and even to start off the season, you know, it's something that you're going to try to do here, like Guillaume Mador is trying to do here, the Canadian driver who is currently riding in the Lexus for EGT Motorsport, trying to move up a couple of spots here, now chasing down, I believe that's Ryan Woodrow up in front of him, and one of the Lamborghini Huracans that we have in the field for Flashpoint Esports. And I love the fact that even though we've entered the final 19 minutes of this event here, we still got fights that are kind of going on all throughout, and even what we just saw there in that race for 35th that we had on the screen a little bit ago. Physical at times, because that's how much these positions matter to these racers, because, you know, this is your one opportunity to start your season off on the right foot, and although not everyone's going to walk out of here a happy camper for sure, there's still positions to be made up here, and we're still going to see a couple of drivers overstep boundaries like we do see. I believe that was Lavoie off in the distance there, and his Porsche 911 GT3 skipping over the curbs. How about this fight here just outside the top 10? A couple of drivers trying to battle back for some misfortune, and another McLaren trying to get up into the top 10 with that of Simon Fisher. He's the car that's in the middle of the frame here, trying to close up and get up and around Lou, who holds down the 11th spot. And remember, Carton Lou, that car was around backwards at one point in this race, now running in 11th.
Yeah, I think Carton Lou's a little bit farther up the road. The car that we're looking at now is the 44th place car. It is one of the Mercedes-AMG GT3s. That's lap traffic for Simon Fisher, who's going to go down the inside into turn number 2 and bring Knappen with him into number 40. Again, that's that Lamborghini as they head up the hill now towards turns 3, 4, and 5. Looking really good, though. Simon Fisher continues to drive forward. He's had a really solid day. And all you can really ask, Eric, in a race with 48 cars, if you finish better than you started, you probably can walk away with a smile on your face. If you walk away inside the top 20 today, you've done a really amazing job, because this 48-car field, the difference in skill level from the top driver to the bottom driver is not very high at all. So to make your mark here today is challenging. And you mentioned this is the only opportunity to start your season on the right foot, and you certainly don't want to start your season finishing 31st. You have to dig yourself out of a hole if you want that championship. So there's a lot of drivers that came in here with high expectations, and some of that frustration might be setting in. If they came in here with those expectations and aren't meeting them, with 17 minutes to go, the clock is ticking down, and you're running out of time to make your mark.
Corrected there on trying to watch Fisher get up there to Lou. There's about 3-second buffer that Lou has to work with there. Let's go back up inside the top 10 right now as we watch Ryan Meenan try to get up and around Patterson, who's also had a really good day. And I agree with you, Kyle, wholeheartedly. In a race of this caliber, or with a field with this much talent, as Ryan Meenan's going to send it up the inside of the final corner. Not sure how he got away with that one, and is not able to complete the pass off the corner. They're going to drag race up the main straightaway. But I think these drivers have to have big picture in mind, especially with some of this racing we're seeing here, with Simard trying to close to make it a 3-car battle for this 8th position. Simard's going to look down low, try to outbrake the Porsche into the corner, and this fight will continue on off turn 2. Great racing going on all the way around, but big picture, got to keep it in mind here. You're one mistake or one bit of contact away from throwing away what could be a really good day on this track with a solid run, not only with a top 10 or perhaps top 20. These drivers got to keep that in the forefront of their minds.
Yeah, and of course, we just saw the message pop up. The penalty for the number 25 car of Carton Lou. You see the 15-second penalty there. Avoidable contact. Got himself into some trouble with some fenders. That's 15-second penalty for contact with the 23 car of Killian Ryan Meenan. So while I think they're still facing the same direction, this was an incident on lap number 10 that prompted this call. Also a drive-through penalty for car number 39, Pierre-Olivier Cloutier, in the EGT Motorsport vehicle for contact with the 909. That was also an incident on lap number 10. The receiving car, Chris Bruno, in the Porsche 911 GT3R for CMS Pro. So there are still penalties coming down, but man, the stewards have been watching closely today, Eric, to make sure that no one's getting away with anything that they shouldn't, as we go back to a battle for 16th place.
And I will tell you, as we watch this battle for 16th rage on, I do not envy the role of the stewards at all. I'm happy that I'm in my chair and they are in their chair, because they're the ones who have to make sure that this race is being handled and officiated properly and fairly. And judging by a number of the things that we've seen so far here tonight, they've had their hands full as far as reviewing them. And hats off to them being able to hand down decisions in a quick and prompt manner. We see a lot of other occasions where oftentimes you don't know until well after the race is long said and done that you start to see penalty reports handed out. And, I applaud the fact they're able to get these out and open here in the sim as quickly as possible, so we kind of know how things shake out once the final results are left calculated. Now we're looking at one of the Audis in the field, is in the term of Amelia Carpentier, who is holding down that spot right now in 16th. Doing a good job, and as you mentioned, top 20 is something to be proud of here tonight, Kyle. I mean, with this level of the field, 48 cars came down for the green, and right now Carpentier is doing a great job in that 16th spot. With a few more positions further up the road, you can judge by the intervals that are seen there, and it's based on the car ahead are those pluses and minuses that we're able to look at it for our reference point, and we're starting to see that story pan out all throughout as we drop back here and look at the driver in 27th and Ryan Woodrow, who has a car going around.
Yeah, that was Medor in the Lexus spinning around in 28th spot, the number 111 car for EGT Motorsport. So Guillaume goes around. Also wanted to mention just briefly the number 49 who we saw in the previous shot. That, of course, Alou Gobi. She's from Map 1 Racing, having a really solid day. Just wanted to make sure that she got some mention, as she's had a really solid day so far, chasing the top 15, and those spots are in front. But as we just saw the 111 go back around, well, he did get it straightened out and will continue. Blue flags flying there with some mix of lap traffic, but Gobi continues her charge forward towards the top 15, so a great run for her.
Yeah, Lou Gobi now doing a great job here this evening as well, and still in potential here for a top 15 finish the way that things are running. And I love the fact they're able to see how a number of drivers are able to use the VR setups that they may have as Gobi looks down low here to try to make a pass on a bit of lap traffic. And I love the fact that the blue flags are also in action here, because that does kind of showcase another element of realism in this sim, and is the fact that you do have to negotiate your way through lap traffic, not just for the guy who's leading the race in the tune of Cody Pride, but really everybody who's battling for position throughout the pack is going to encounter some driver who is not having as good of a day as they are. And that's another bit of a learning curve that everybody's got to navigate through and negotiate through. And so far, Gobi has done a great job in working her way through lap traffic to continue to hold on to that spot as we flash back up here to the last car running in the top 10 in Simard in the BMW.
Simard running really well inside the top 10. Quick note on the number 20 car, Thomas Lavoie. He has gotten himself a penalty in the EGT Motorsport Porsche 911 GT3R. Will have to come on down and serve a penalty as well. Cardin Lou, you see the 15-second penalty applied there. He has not yet come down to serve that. Continues to run down in 11th overall. At the front of the order, though, Cody Pride continues to lead. His lead is growing, Eric, and continues to impress with the pace that he's got. But back to Patterson and Ryan Meenan. This battle for 8th is heating up here between the Acura NSX GT3 Evo and that of the Aston Martin Vantage of Killian Ryan Meenan right behind him.
Right now, Patterson's doing everything possible to try to hold on to that spot. He's got a little bit up the road to try to get to Ryan Walker to move up any higher as a car merges on and taps him as they slide their way through the final corner, and he spins up on the main straightaway.
And a contact there, and they gets it straightened back out, but maybe a little bit of damage now for the 24. And 3 wide, squeezing up drivers right. I can't tell what that's a Porsche. That might be Canapan, and no, that he'd be a Lamborghini. There's a Porsche, maybe Mathis in the number 6, but it's got really wild there for a moment. Here comes Cardin Lou up the inside, and another one of those Acuras down into turn number 2. Side-by-side teammates there for a moment. That got very, very dicey between Patterson and Lou. Almost a touchdown there, but the Acuras for HPD Yas are really impressing today with the performance that they've had, but they almost took each other out down there in turn number 2.
You mentioned with that penalty that Lou is yet to serve, driving a little bit angry there. You can see the steam coming out of Lou's car, knowing that he's got to make up as much position as possible in order to try to negate that penalty that's been assessed by the contact that happened earlier. But look at this. We've entered about the final 10 minutes, just 10 plus minutes of this race, and you would think we're on the last lap already. We almost got that 4-wide moment heading up to 2 a lap ago. It took us about 15 minutes into the race to make it happen, but this is good stuff here. Patterson lives to fight another day. The driver who was able to benefit the most by all that rooting and gouging that was going on there was Philippe Simard. His quiet charge up to the field continues. He got up and around them both there in that BMW to move up to 8th, but this fight continues on here for about the 10th spot.
Certainly seems like Killian Ryan Meenan is driving with a little bit of a hot head right now, and can you blame him? He's been run into a couple times today, so he's getting those elbows out and making that car very wide at the moment. Doesn't need a whole lot of help. That Aston Martin's got some pretty wide hips, but he's certainly driving defensively and driving angry right now. But Eric, there's something to be said about keeping a calm, cool, and collected. There's still 10 minutes to go. You can really easily throw a race away. So Ryan Meenan's had some things happen to him today that weren't his fault, but stay cool because you only have 10 minutes left to pick your yourself up a finish at the very least, and you can move on to the next race and try to improve your points. But don't do anything out of desperation today just to get 1 or 2 spots back. It's probably not going to be worth it. Here is the penalty to car number 52 for avoidable contact. The car number 52 being that of Skylar Loverink in the Bricks Racing Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. So another penalty, and we've seen a handful of those today. Eric, the name of the game has been keeping it on the black stuff and keeping it off of your fellow competitors, and keeping your fenders on your car, because we've seen a lot of penalties today, and you can't have that if you're going to want to win a championship.
That was one element of this race that I did not consider, was the fact that, you know, not only could you make a mistake that could cost you, but if you cost the competition, it would end up coming back to bite you as well with all the penalties that have been handed out today with some of the rough riding that's been going on. We'll drop back here and look momentarily at a Lugobi once again, who's still in this bit of a hornet's nest of a fight that continues on. And I love the opportunity that we have here to be able to pan out and watch all the battles that are happening in this GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Fights all over the place, both ends of the racing running order here. This fight that continues on, as you mentioned, that is hot and heavy for about the 10th spot. Racing that's going on there for 17th. The only driver who has not been under any form of fire since about the 3rd lap in this race is our leader in Cody Pride, who is carrying the banner for the Porsches quite proudly here today. You have to look pretty far down the running order to find the next Porsche in the field, and we had 6 of them entered in this race. So right now, Cody Pride is doing everything possible to keep the Porsche badge proud, and he has a 4-second lead right now over the field, while we continue to watch these battles for position all throughout the pack with 8+ minutes to go.
I love that split screen, and a big thanks to AK Esports as well as SimGrid for making that possible. Really great look at a couple different battles on the racetrack, but back here again for 11th spot, Ryan Meenan on the back of Cardin Lou. Lou going defensive down here towards turn number 2, and there is a Bentley that is a lap down. Big dive on the brakes for the Aston Martin. Now tries to arc it a little bit deeper on corner exit to pull side by side, and if he can stay alongside, he'd have a great passing opportunity, but couldn't do it. Now he dives up the inside. Is there going to be a touch there? Maybe just a slight scrape, but Cardin Lou runs a little wide, and they're still door to door as they head down towards Sunset here, Eric, side by side. They're going to run each other off the racetrack. If they keep doing it like this, they got to sort it out, because here comes Simon Fisher in the 595 McLaren behind him.
That contact continues off the corner. Boy, Fisher's going to be in the catbird seat here for this. If I was him, I may want to sit and wait and let these guys continue to bounce off each other, but there's more cars coming behind them. It's a blend of some lead lap cars for position and some lap traffic, as it looks as though Ryan Meenan's going to try to do everything possible to move up and will take the 10th spot away after an incredible battle that lasted about 6 corners on this layout and moved Ryan Meenan up into the top 10. And now it is up to Simon Fisher to try to see what he could do with Cardin Lou in what is now a battle for 11th spot.
And here comes Knoppen in the Lamborghini in behind. Again, all battling for points paying positions here at the moment. So they've got 6 minutes and 45 seconds left to sort it out, and that time is running down, and everyone feels that pressure. It's certainly a coordinating back together just outside of the top 10 here. 4 or 5 cars on top of each other as we continue to battle here just outside of the top 10. Daniluk also joining the party from behind. There's a look off the back of Cardin Lou. Look at Simon Fisher closing on the brakes here in that final corner. It is far from over.
And Fisher's trying to do everything he can to get up potentially into the top 10. That would mean that half the top 10 would be represented by McLaren. Should Fisher be able to find a way up and around Lou as well as Ryan Meenan. But right now, objective number 1 is to get through Cardin Lou here as they stomp on the brake pedal and set up for the left-hander at turn 2. And then they will come through turns 3 and 4. Barbecue is going to be the next opportunity to get a good run here. Turn 5 is the nickname for that on this layout of the racetrack. I think Clubhouse turn 7 may be the next best passing opportunity for Fisher, but we've seen Cardin Lou do everything possible to try to defend the position, and I expect Lou to continue that trend here, as now not only is Fisher there as well, but Knoppen is off track.
Knoppen far off track. That was 8 miles off course down there on the run down through Sunset. Must have just missed the turn-in. Car can walk on you a little bit if you've got the downforce kind of tuned out of it. So car sidestepped in one of the highest speed corners on the racetrack, and he gathered it back up but lost a couple positions. Those are going to be costly positions to lose in the last 5 minutes of the race here, Eric. Not a lot of time to make up ground if you lose it in the last few laps.
Fortunately for Knoppen, you saw there right up there in the mix of a potential spot closer to the top 10. Now falls back a little bit. We'll wait for timing and scoring to officially update to reflect the mistake that Knoppen made. There it is. Going to move Knoppen back to 15th as a matter of fact. Lost a few spots there as we continue to look out the back of Lou to Fisher in what is one of the best races that we have on the racetrack right now. With Fisher biding his time. I haven't seen him try to send it in or even try to force Lou into a mistake just yet, or fill up the mirrors on the left or right side of that car. And this race is going to continue up on the main straightaway with under 5 minutes to go.
5 minutes left, 4 minutes and 36 seconds to be exact. There's an incident on lap 28 and a warning to car 17 for ignoring the blue flag. That was Guillermo Martinez for the Carbonez Racing Team Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. So just a warning for blue flag violation there, but we'll get to continue. As you see some more blue flags flying here as we watch Carden Liu and Simon Fisher. There's a Bentley again just in front of them. Again, not on the lead lap, so that again will, as the blue flags fly, he'll have to heed position to those on the lead lap that are battling. Blue flags, to my understanding, Eric, not compulsory. You don't have to pull over. However, if you're going to be in the way, then they're going to tell you to get out of the way. So it's one of those things that's a gentlemanly thing to do, and especially in the final couple minutes of a race, it's just a better idea to let the lead lap cars by, especially if they're in a battle. And we'll see if that happens again here on the run down the hill.
We know that drivers often don't forget when they are given room, and more importantly, when they're not given any room. So just remember, whatever favor that you're trying to withhold for yourself there, you know, you're going to want that paid back perhaps later in the season if you're not willing to get up and out of the way as some of the lead lap cars that are battling for position. Everybody keeps a mental tally as to how things unfold in their respective race throughout their seasons or throughout their driving careers, depending on how far back one may want to go. And that's something that these racers got to keep in mind. If they're having a bit of an off day, and we see that Bentley yield now to these drivers who are continuing to fight for 11th and 12th position respectively, with another driver starting to arrive on the scene here as far as Steven Daniluk in the Aston Martin for Java Racing, trying to close up there as well. He's, as a matter of fact, within a second of this fight between Lou and Fisher. But time is starting to run out. I think we're only going to have about a handful of laps to go here for these drivers to try and settle it. And they're about 2.5 seconds off of Ryan Meenan, who moved up into the top 10 with the pass he made 2 laps ago. Not sure if they're going to be able to get there, but this race is probably going to go all the way down to the checkers.
Well, of course, this race has been a chess match from the drop of the green flag, Eric, and now you're preparing your final move. And if you're getting geared up for it, you're running out of time to make it. So some drivers in the last few minutes will feel the need to force a move. But Eric, gaining 1 point now or preventing the loss of 10 points now, that's the ultimate decision. Is do you feel like it's worth the risk to get that one final spot? Now, for some drivers like Carden Liu, Simon Fisher, yes, they might feel like it's worth it to battle these last couple laps. But if you're Cody Pride or you're Kandaxi Glue, you're going to be pretty content where you are and not put yourself in a risky position here in the last 2 minutes.
I agree 100%. I mean, we saw Knopfin make a mistake. Granted, it didn't appear from our vantage point that it was contact-based, but we did see something unfold similar to that nature, and it cost about 4 or 5 spots with about 6 laps to go. So, you know, of course you want to try to have the best result possible, and you can see it right out your grasp if you're someone like that of Simon Fisher. You know that the opportunity is there to get at least one more spot, and you could hope that perhaps something could happen up ahead of you to get you up into the top 10, but you don't want to force it too much because you could end up on the outside looking in, not only in terms of points, but as far as your results here tonight. You've made it this far. You've made it this far up through the field. You want to be able to wrap it up on a positive note. Not sending it in there would be my best advice, but we know these drivers are going to do everything possible to try to bring it home with the best finish that they can. And Fisher may be trying to set up a bit of a run here on the main straightaway.
Great look off the tailpipes of the Acura NSX GT3 Evo for HPD Yas Pro America with Carden Liu. Looking back at Simon Fisher as we've got 1 minute remaining here as we begin the penultimate lap. Of course, Cody Pride will begin the final lap with just a few seconds to go. So not quite the white flag lap just yet, but look at Simon Fisher right to the tailpipes and a touch. Carden Liu is going to slide, and he's going to tag one of the Aston Martins. That was Daniluk in the number 8. They're going to stay straight, but that was a bit of a knock and a push from the Ryan Meenan car, or actually from Fisher, excuse me, as he goes by Daniluk and Liu. So that, wow, look at this chaos that's created down here through Sunset, Eric. It is popping off here in the last minute and a half.
And Lou has just added insult to injury here, and I don't believe that was any of his doing as the contact continues, and Lou's going to get tagged again. Things going from bad to worse for Carden Liu, who is now backwards off the corner.
Yeah, just in the center of everything there and couldn't find a way out of the way. And unfortunately, Carden Liu's great race is going to come down to the end in not such a great fashion as we go back up to the front. There is Hendrickson. Now, we note that Cody Pride has just begun the final lap, so just over 2.5 miles here, Eric. One more lap around in the first round of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, and Cody Pride is free and clear of condaxial glue and so far away that as long as he keeps it straight, then he is going to be just fine to win this first round.
Cody Pride was not the fastest car in qualifying. In fact, I would say that through the homework that I did in preparation for this race, that the Porsche 911 may not have been the best choice when you come to a track of this nature, like what we have here at our venue to kick off our season. And I will tell you that if you look at the timing and scoring standings, he is the only Porsche in the top 14, and he has dominated. I kept waiting to see when this car would fade, maybe go back a little bit to the drivers who are fighting it out for podium spots, but Pride has not relinquished the top spot since getting the lead, and he is en route to what may be a season-opening victory.
This has been a dominant performance, and remember that, again, he didn't start out front, and he had to work his way there, but it didn't take him very long at all. The aggression on the start is what helped get him here, but now with him leading this race for basically the entire time, sans a few laps in the middle when he came down to pit lane, he has essentially led this entire race flag to flag. If you're everybody else out there on the racetrack right now, you circle this one car on the entry list for round number 2, because this is the guy you're going to have to beat. Cody Pride for PPR Esports comes through the last couple of corners, and maybe to the surprise of none, he's on the top of the he's on the top of the order for the entry list. He's going to be on top of the standings at the end of the first round of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Cody Pride wins at Kyalami. Condaxioglu comes home in second in the number 96. Third place going to be Hendrickson in the 757, the Mercedes-AMG GT3. Honor Rowe is going to come home in fourth. What a performance by her. And then Seaver in the number 81 is going to wrap up the top 5 here. Eric, a solid race in the top 5, but for Cody Pride, just never had to look back.
Came into the season numbered up as car 1, ends the race in position P1, and again was not the fastest car in qualifying. And you know, we kept hyping up as we watched a couple of battles continue out here as Fisher is trying to get up into the top 10, perhaps off the final corner. But I will tell you, as a matter of fact, I was a lap car ahead of Fisher, my mistake. But when it comes to Pride and the performance that he put down, I love looking at the standings and seeing where the other Porsches were in the field. We mentioned 6 of them on the entry list. That was tied for the most with the McLarens as far as the highest number of entries for one particular manufacturer. And it was Pride carrying it all the way for Porsche en route to victory, while the rest of the field comes across the line to wrap things up here. What a day and what a night for him.
Fantastic drive for, of course, Cody Pride. Some other battles to the line. The 11 car had a great battle to the end there with the Audi R8 LMS GT3 Evo for Penn Karts Racing. But Eric, what a great way to kick off this first round. Now, one of the things I'm going to take away from this round, though, Eric, is so many penalties. A lot of people getting elbows out. We started this race with 48 cars. It's a big field, and it's sometimes a narrow racetrack, but going off into the future rounds, you cannot earn points if you're picking up penalties week in and week out. So for the drivers that came out away from here with a penalty or with a drive-through, this is a learning experience today to not do that again if you want to be the champion at season's end. But for some of the drivers at the top of the order, phenomenal drives. Honor Rose, great performance by her, especially racing the Mercedes of Hendrickson for so long. To not have significant contact there in such a heated race, that was really, really impressive. And I think those two are also going to be some of the top runners here this season.
Yeah, and the other thing is we talk about the penalty report as we take a look at how these drivers came to the checkered flag here. When we look at the penalty report, you know, I also wonder how many of these drivers are going to remember the little bit of rough riding that happened, and if that's going to parlay in some of the events we see. At the very least, it will pan out in terms of respect or lack thereof as the season unfolds. So that physical nature of today's first round of racing action, it may not carry over in that same capacity, but I do expect it to be a storyline going through as the rest of the season unfolds.
For sure. Another note of one of the drivers in the top 10, Philippe Simard, came up into 8th place. That was a very solid run for Philippe. Also, I wanted to check in and see where Brian Heitkonner finished 18th from 30th. So not as much progress as I thought we'd see, but still very good progress nonetheless. And we should have Cody Pride with us and ready to talk to about his dominant race here today. That was a heck of a drive for Cody. So, Cody, welcome up here to the booth. What an incredible drive to just go out there and from the very drop of the green flag and just drive away. And it didn't seem like you had a lot to deal with in the mirror today, but take us through the race from your perspective. What was the lap traffic like, and what was it like for you out there today, and do you feel like you can repeat this performance at the next round?
Well, I mean, I kind of got lucky because Porsche's really nice and fast off the starts, and I was really lucky Michael went to cover off Hendrickson in the Merc, so I kind of like broke really late and sailed right around him. And then I didn't mean to send it on Hendrickson, but he kind of left the room, so I went for it anyway. And then tyres started going off. Michael was catching in the McLaren. We were about 1 second back for the entire first stint. It was really good. And then we pitted, and well, I mean, I kind of got lucky because I came out right ahead of 2 lap cars, and they held up Michael for quite a bit. So, and then his pace started dropping off. So I was quite lucky, and yeah, I hope to repeat this at Donington.
Well, of course, the Porsche 911 GT3R is a spectacular platform for a number of reasons, but I always like talking about this car because of how different it is to the other GT3 cars. Of course, the rear engine platform. We might have weather be a factor later in the season. Do you feel like having the Porsche gives you an advantage in the rain, and will that be something significant to talk about later this season?
Yeah, I think the Porsche overall is a very good wet car, although I think the front engine cars, especially the Aston, do have a slight upper hand. But we'll see on ballast, because I got a bit lucky today with ballast. 15 kg was not a lot for how fast the Porsche is on its own. So yeah, I got quite lucky with that.
And heading to Donington in about a month's time, your confidence level heading there, is that another round that you feel like you can repeat at? And going forward, I mean, this field is so competitive. To come out of here, this has got to be a huge confidence boost.
Yeah, I didn't actually expect to win, to be honest. I tried to qualify for the Europe round. I didn't really get that. But Donington is my favourite track, so I think I'll practice a lot for that, because I have a big chance of getting some good points there as well, because Porsche is also one of the fastest, so yeah.
Well, Cody, congratulations for your PPR Esports team to come home with victory in the first round of the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Thanks for talking to us. Congratulations, and we'll see you in about a month at Donington.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on now, Eric. We're going to wrap things up here, begin to wrap things up. We alluded to the next round, which happens in just over a month at Donington Park on June 26th here for the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. First off in South Africa, then we're heading up to the UK for Donington. That's a great international racetrack. I can't wait. We have some of the best racetracks on the international calendar on our schedule this season. But your final thoughts on race number 1 here. For all intents and purposes, this is a great race today. A little messy towards the mid-pack and a few penalties that got handed out, but I think a lot of drivers learned some things about not only themselves, but their competitors that they can apply to Donington in a month.
And I agree, Kyle, and I think that we are able to take a lot out of today's race, even though there was some pushing and shoving going on. But Donington does have a lot of characteristics as to what we saw here tonight. So tonight may have been a good barometer as to what we're going to see when it comes down to that race in about a month's time. But I love the nature of this series. I love how competitive it is. I love how fierce everybody is. I know this is a sprint race. There's a handful of them on the schedule, but I expect this level of intensity to continue not only throughout the season, but even when we get down to some of our endurance races. These guys came ready to race. They've proven it tonight, and boy, was it exciting from start to finish, and I'm happy the season's underway, and I can't wait for the next one.
It's going to be a little while. Again, June 26th is our last round. Thanks so much for watching the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. A big thanks to the partners and people that make this happen. Fanatec, AWS, CrowdStrike, Pirelli, HPD, of course, Kunos, AK Esports, and the SimGrid. I'm Kyle Heyer with Eric Brennan. We'll see you in a month at Donington Park on June 26th for round 2 of the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship.